Aloha, my name is George Schooler, and this is my BUSA 486 senior project. The title of my project is Forensic Accounting. This is a timeline of some of the forensic accounting events and cases that are within my project. First start with Mayer versus Sefton in 1817. This was a Canadian bankruptcy case, and it was the first documented example of an accountant being called as an eyewitness in a court case. Next, in 1824, we have James McClellan. McClellan was the first to advertise his services as an accountant for court proceedings. At this time, the term forensic accountant was not yet in use, but McClellan was in essence the first forensic accountant to advertise his services. In 1920, we have the case of Charles Ponzi. Charles Ponzi was an Italian immigrant who attracted over 40,000 New England investors with his Ponzi scheme. Ponzi promised high returns on investment in a very short period of time. He used the new investments he was receiving from investors to pay off his earlier investors. Ponzi's scheme was revealed in large part to the help of forensic accounting. Ponzi would later plead guilty and receive a 3.5-year prison sentence. Ponzi's investors were only able to receive back 12 cents on each dollar invested. In 1931, we have the case of Al Capone, and I'll cover that later on. It has its own slide. In 1946, we have Maurice Ploubet. Ploubet was the first to coin the term forensic accounting. Ploubet was a distinguished member of the New York accounting community for 53 years. He also served as president and later on as director of the New York State Society of CPAs. In 2001, we have the Enron scandal. The Enron scandal cost investors hundreds of millions of dollars and also ended the run of Big Five accounting firm Arthur Andersen due to its part in trying to cover up the Enron scandal. The very next year, we have the WorldCom scandal. WorldCom inflated its assets by $11 million and in total cost investors over $180 billion. WorldCom would overtake Enron for the largest corporate bankruptcy of all time. In 2009, we have the Madoff Ponzi scheme, and I'll cover that later as Madoff has his own slide. So here we have a picture of Al Capone being led from the courthouse following his trial on tax evasion in 1931. Capone was an infamous Chicago mobster during the Prohibition period. IRS agent Frank Wilson scoured through millions of documents to find evidence that would eventually lead to Capone's conviction. The mobster was sentenced to 11 years and fined over $80,000. This case helped show many in law enforcement how useful forensic accounting could be. Here we have the case of Bernie Madoff. And Madoff is a perpetrator of the biggest and longest running Ponzi scheme of all time. For nearly 50 years, Bernie Madoff ran his Ponzi scheme through his firm, Bernard L. Madoff Securities, LLC. Madoff's fraud cost investors over $18 billion in actual losses. Madoff was convicted in 2009 and sentenced to 150 years in federal prison. Court-appointed trustee Irvin Picard used forensic accounting to trace the funds of the Madoff Ponzi scheme, and as of February 2013, he was able to recover over $9 billion of the $18 billion that was lost. And here we have a chart of the frauds of the early 2000s, or 3 of them. The Enron fraud here. We have the WorldCom fraud here. And you can see it cost investors $180 billion. And here we have the Tyco. And that's the amount of money the CEO stole from the company itself. So here we have the SEC board members. We have Aguilar, Pivowar, White, Stein, and Gallagher. The Securities and Exchange Commission was created in 1934 to enforce the laws brought about in the Securities Act of 1933. The Securities Act of 1933 was passed to help stem the tide of the 1929 stock market crash and the ensuing Great Depression. This helped reinstill investor confidence in the market. The Financial Accounting Standards Board, or FASB, is a private organization created in 1973 to establish the standards of financial accounting. FASB standards are recognized by the SEC and the AICPA as the authority in the United States. Here we have FASB board members: Buck, Linsmeyer, Golden, Schroeder, Croker, Siegel, and Smith. The Public Company Accounting Oversight Board was created by the SOX Act of 2002. The board oversees the audit of public companies subject to financial reporting. These are the board members of the PCAOB. We have Chairman Dottie, Ferguson, Hansen, Frenzel, and Harris. So we have the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, otherwise called the SOX Act of 2002. And it was brought about by the corporate frauds, or partially brought about by the corporate frauds of Enron, WorldCom, and Tyco. Investor confidence needed to be reinstilled, and this legislature was named after Senator Paul Sarbanes and Representative Michael Oxley. The SOX Act of 2002 was created to stop the flow of fear created by the corporate frauds of early 2000s. This was a quick way to ensure investors that things would change and that executives would be held directly responsible for the financials that their firms released. And here we have the first couple pages of the SOX Act of 2002. And you can see here we have the act to protect investors by improving the accuracy and reliability of corporate disclosures made pursuant to the securities laws and for other purposes. And this act was enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress. So here we have a table of contents. We have the title, 1, Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. That's the establishment of the PCAOB that I referred to a couple slides ago. And we have sections 101 through 109. Run through them briefly. 101 is establishment and administrative provisions. 102 is registration with the board. 103 is auditing, quality control, and independent standards and rules. Section 104, inspections of registered and public accounting firms. Section 105 is investigations and disciplinary proceedings. 106 is foreign public accounting firms. 107 is commission oversight of the board. 108 is accounting standards. And 109 is funding. So this goes about creating the PCAOB, how it will be funded, and what the responsibilities are. And as I scroll down, Title 2 is auditor independence. Title 3 is corporate responsibility. Title 4 is enhanced financial disclosures. Title 5 is analyst conflicts of interest. Title 6 is commissions, resource, and authority. Title 7 is studies and reports. Title 8 is corporate and criminal fraud accountability. So this will be the accountability for some of the, these are the new accountabilities for some of the frauds that were mentioned earlier. And these are increased punishment and penalties. Section 9, or Title 9, is white collar crime penalty enhancements. And these are referring to CEOs and executives and some of the penalties they face from 2002 forward if their firms do commit these penalties. Title 10 is corporate tax returns. And Title 11 is corporate fraud and accountability. And that completes my presentation for today. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me. Aloha.